If you really stop and think about it, humans are, well, we're a biological superpower. Our whole success as a species really boils down to two things: our amazing capacity for culture and our truly mind blowing ability to cooperate. And it's that second one, cooperation, that holds one of the biggest, most fascinating mysteries about who we are.
I mean, really, just think about that for a second. No other species on Earth does what we do. We build these massive cities, we run global economies, we work together on huge scientific projects, and we do it all with total strangers, people we've never met and will probably never meet again. From a classic evolutionary standpoint, that is just super weird, right? So, how in the world did we become the planet's ultimate team players? That's the big puzzle we're going to try and solve today.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into five main parts. First up, we'll really define the cooperation puzzle. Then we'll dive into a major theory called cultural group selection. After that, we'll ask the big question: does the evidence actually add up? Then we'll look at a different idea: designing better groups. And finally, we'll try to put it all together and ask, is our cooperation about culture or is it just pure calculation?
Okay, so let's kick things off with the puzzle itself. And look, understanding our unique brand of cooperation, it's not just some dusty academic question. No way. This gets right to the very core of how we built the entire modern world and what makes us so profoundly different from every other living thing on this planet.
All right, so how do we even begin to explain this?
Well, for decades, one of the biggest, most powerful, and honestly most debated explanations out there is a theory called cultural group selection. We'll just call it CGS for short. The basic idea is actually pretty simple, but trust me, its implications are massive. So here's the core idea of CGS. It suggests that human evolution wasn't just a story about individual survival of the fittest. It was also about a fierce competition between entire groups. Imagine two ancient tribes. In this struggle, the theory goes, groups that had cultural norms that promoted cooperation, things like loyalty, a sense of fairness, maybe even self-sacrifice, they just plain outcompeted and eventually replaced the groups that were full of selfish individuals. To put it simply, cooperative groups.
Now, CGS isn't just one single idea. It actually comes in two main flavors. The first one is what we'll call maladaptive CGS. This version suggests we cooperate because we blindly copy whatever everyone else is doing, even if it's not great for us personally. We're just conformists. Then there's normative CGS, which argues it's a bit more sophisticated. This one says we cooperate because we have this built-in norm psychology. Basically, we're wired to follow the rules and, crucially, to punish anyone who doesn't. That makes cooperation a smart, self-interested choice because you really don't want to get punished.
Okay, so that's the theory in a nutshell. But a good scientific theory has to do more than just sound good. It has to stand up to the evidence. So let's do what any good scientist would do. Let's put the two core assumptions of CGS, this idea of blind copying and the idea of selfless punishment, let's put them to the test. All right, first up, let's tackle that idea from maladaptive CGS. Are we really just blind conformists? Do we just unthinkingly copy what our group does, even when it hurts us personally?
Well, this quote from the biologist Kevin Lawlin just hits the nail on the head. He says, human beings copy. They copy a great deal, but they do not slavishly copy. And that's the key, right? The evidence really suggests we are not just blind puppets of our culture. Our copying is smart, it's strategic, it's not slavish.
And the actual data totally backs this up. When you run these economic game experiments, you see that people don't just mindlessly copy the majority. Not at all. They use social information very flexibly to try and make the most money for themselves. And here's the real kicker. They often end up copying the most successful players in the game, who, it turns out, are frequently the most selfish ones. On top of that, we see people change their behavior in a heartbeat based on the situation, like if they know they're being watched. They don't need to copy anyone to do that. It all points to our social learning being way, way more sophisticated than just blind conformism.
Okay, so that whole blind copying idea seems pretty shaky. But what about the other big pillar of CGS, the one from the normative version? The idea that we punish people who break the rules and we do it selflessly for the good of the group, even when it costs us something. Well, here's the fascinating part. When you look really closely at the data, this so-called altruistic punishment often turns out to be a super savvy, self-interested strategy. People don't just punish randomly. They punish strategically to teach cheaters a lesson and encourage them to cooperate next time, which of course benefits the punisher. In fact, over the long run, these altruistic punishers often end up with bigger personal payoffs.
Plus, punishing cheaters helps you build a reputation as someone who's trustworthy, and that is a massive personal advantage. So it starts to look less like a selfless act and more like a smart, strategic investment. So, if this idea of blind cultural evolution isn't the full picture, then what is? What's the alternative? Well, this brings us to a really different way of looking at the problem. What if cooperation isn't just something that happens to us, like a slow evolutionary drift, but something we actively, consciously create? This is what's known as the rational actor approach. And the idea here is that humans aren't just passive sponges soaking up culture. Nope, we are smart, intelligent agents. We look at our problems, we figure out what's in our own best interest, and then we actively design the social rules, the institutions that can solve our problems and make cooperation the winning strategy. And this isn't just some abstract theory either. We have fantastic real-world examples. Take the fishermen of Alanya in Turkey. Back in the 1970s, they were facing a total disaster, a classic tragedy of the commons. Basically, everyone was overfishing to get what they could, and it was destroying the fish stocks and ruining their livelihoods for good. And for a decade, they struggled, trying and failing to fix it. But then, they did something amazing. They didn't just wait for a new, better culture to magically appear. They sat down together and consciously designed a whole new system from the ground up, one that rotated fishing rights. It was brilliant because it made it easy to spot cheaters, and it perfectly aligned every single fisherman's self-interest with the health of the group. So here's the secret sauce for how these designed institutions actually work. They don't rely on blind faith or selfless altruism. They're just smart. They literally change the rules of the game. They build in systems to monitor what everyone's doing, they make it easy and cheap to punish defectors, and sometimes they even reward the people who do the punishing. They completely flip the script, making cooperation the most rational, most self-interested choice for everybody in the game. Okay, so this brings us to our final big showdown. We have these two powerful but kind of competing ideas on the table. On one side, you have the norm-first approach of cultural group selection, and on the other, you have the rational choice approach of designing our own rules. So which one is it? Is our cooperation driven by culture or by cold, hard calculation? And you can really see the core tension here when you put them side by side. The CGS, norm-first view, says that culture is the cause of our behavior. We inherit these norms, and then competition between groups slowly sorts out the best ones over centuries. The rational choice view completely flips that around. It argues that our real-world problems and our own self-interest are what drive us, right now, to design the institutions that eventually become our culture. But you know what? Maybe this is a false choice. Maybe it's not an either-or situation at all. In fact, the most likely answer is that these two things are locked in a feedback loop. Think about it. Our smart, rational choices create new rules and institutions. That becomes our culture. And then that culture shapes the choices and the starting point for the next generation. It's a constant, dynamic dance between our calculations and our culture. So let's just boil this all down to the key takeaways. First, the really simple versions of cultural group selection, the ones that say we're just blind copiers or totally selfless punishers, they don't really seem to hold up under scrutiny. Second, we are not passive puppets. We are active, strategic designers of our own social rules. Third, this doesn't mean we're just selfish. It means we're smart enough to get that our own success is tied to our group's success. That makes cooperation a deeply rational choice. And finally, yeah, competition between groups is a real thing, but we can also build cooperation from the ground up, from within a group. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on: our incredible ability to cooperate on a massive scale. It's arguably our species' greatest masterpiece. But the question is, was that masterpiece painted slowly by the blind forces of cultural evolution over thousands of years? Or was it consciously engineered by our own clever, problem-solving minds? The real answer, as we've seen, is probably a little bit of both. It's this beautiful, ongoing collaboration between our deep history and our present ingenuity. And understanding that dance, well, that's the real key to solving the cooperation conundrum.